Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today. We're excited to have you, and you'll benefit from the information in this webinar. At the end of the presentation, we'll have contact information for you if you're interested in learning more. If you have any problems or experiencing technical issues throughout this presentation, you can message us through the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get back to you. We also plan to allow the last 10 minutes to answer questions. So again, please ask your questions in the chat box, and we'll do our best to get to them. Today we have Roger Melman from LightEdge and Aaron Johnson from ManageForce presenting. Roger Melman is the Director of Enterprise Solutions for LightEdge and has been working with IBM for more than 20 years. His focus is to provide strategic consulting services to businesses by helping them realize more cost-effective operations and improved efficiency with their people, processes, and technologies. Aaron Johnson is a senior J.D. Edwards Solutions Architect for ManageForce with close to 20 years of experience working with J.D. Edwards. Aaron started working with the first release of J.D. Edwards One World and has worked with every release since then, including 9.2. Aaron has performed countless upgrades and cloud migrations, working with clients from pre-meetings and project plans through go live. So Roger, if you would like to begin.
Perfect. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. So let's start with a little history. And so I believe everyone that's on here that's running applications on the AS400 is pretty familiar with the history of the AS400. So I mean, we're almost going on 30 years with IBM releasing the IBM AS400. You know, I think the thing is, especially around the AS400 world, is that when it was originally released, it was I would like to call it the Swiss Army knife for computing. And so for a lot of companies that were doing IBM AS400, it was the web database file server. IBM continues to deliver the platform from year to year. The biggest thing to note is that companies, the companies that have deployed the IBM AS400, they've really built their business around the platform itself. And so, and again, you know, I think the thing to note is that just the whole reliability, availability, the pure processing power that the AS400 delivers to organizations, they really was able to meet the business needs. The AS400 is more commonly known to run the core applications. So JD Edwards and for SAP HANA, they still continue to drive a lot of organizations' business operations. And I think one of the things that we continually hear when we're talking with customers is that the mantra that a lot of what I would call C-level people expect is do more with less. So do more business operations with either less people or less resources. So when we get engaged with customers, one of the things that we hear all the time is that there's really two things that's really very important or very unique to every single organization, and that's the data in the applications. So again, the two most common things that we hear in the market is that really what makes every company unique against their competitors is how they consume the data, how they manipulate the data, and the applications that are installed. Everything else, from the facilities to the compute to the network to the hypervisor and potentially even the operating system, is what we call commodity IT. And I apologize, I'm getting a little lag. So the way that we usually engage customers when they want to look at cloud is, number one, having an understanding between the customer and ourselves. Again, that the two things that's really what really drives their business, what's really responsible for the revenue, is really the data and the applications. Everything else is what we call commodity IT. It's not really unique. So I mean, if a customer that's running an IBM Power Server in their building versus their competitor that's running an IBM Power Server, again, it's just commodity hardware. So what we hear all the time, or what we're experiencing, is why are customers thinking about migrating to the cloud? And here are the essentially the 5 points that we continue to hear time and time again. It's cost containment, growth and scale, risk mitigation, skill shortage, and business continuity. So cost containment, I think if you are a CIO, director of IT, IT manager, the business is always going to force you to basically reduce your investment spend on IT. Again, it's that whole do more with less. And so by moving to the cloud, number one, what you end up getting is what we call predictable spending. So as your business grows, you're literally subscribing to resources that allows you to meet the business requirements. The other thing is growth and scale. So growth and scale anymore, if we were to query owners, the C-level suite, and ask them what their 3-year plan is, 3 or 5-year plan, a lot of times we're met with blank stares. So I've been in the business for almost 30 years. 18 years ago, 15 years ago, I probably had a 3-year strategy in regards to this is where I need to go to. However, anymore today, in order for a company to stay competitive, it means that they're doing dynamic shifting, of their business model on a daily basis. So the next one is risk mitigation. So with risk mitigation, for the companies that we deal with, which are healthcare, finance, manufacturing, distribution, you name it, transportation companies, there's a lot more pressure that's going on currently today in regards to data security, meeting SLAs to either your customers or a vendor partner, where a lot of companies are moving those liabilities to a service provider. And so something which is really unique in the marketplace today is where if you are let's say a manufacturing company and you have a relationship with another company and you're part of their revenue stream, again, that other company is going to want to see that you have specific controls in place. I apologize, I'm having a little technical glitch. The next one is skill shortage. For everybody that's on the webinar today, I think the number one thing, or actually the number one item that's being addressed to us as an IBM service provider is AS400 administrators and engineers. Again, it's just the nature of the beast. There's not a lot of colleges, a lot of training centers that are actually putting out brand new AS400 admins. So a lot of companies are experiencing existing staff that's either in retirement or moving on to different skill sets. And then then the last item is business continuity. And so all of us that are what I would call traditional IBM AS400 or IBM I and Power customers, right? We understand that there's a much higher investment spend to actually procure or purchase an IBM Power system or an IBM I system. So it's not the, I'm going to go onto Dell's website, purchase a $10,000, $15,000 server, and I'm going to run my business on it. I'm going to probably spend anywhere between $70,000 to $250,000 for an IBM Power server. With that being said, a lot of companies don't have an effective, what I would call business continuity plan or disaster recovery solution in place. So a lot of our customers that have migrated over to the cloud, what they end up taking advantage of is our ability to provide disaster recovery services in an OpEx model that meets their RTOs and RPOs, as well as moving their production workload to a very highly available, highly robust system. So it really does change the way that you think and address disaster recovery. And then the other thing is, does it really make sense to buy a second set of equipment just for insurance? So time and time again, when we start talking to customers about disaster recovery, it's a hard concept to sell, especially to CFOs, because again, it's just an insurance plan. So what's IBM's stance on cloud, and where do they see the IBM I platform or IBM I operating system going? So right now, there's a couple things that IBM, if you talk to your IBM integrator, if you talk to IBM themselves, so from this point moving forward, all IBM new customer growth is really going to be driven by software as a service providers delivering applications through the cloud. So those customers that are subscribing for a software, they probably don't even know that the software is actually being delivered by IBM I, but that's right. With cloud adoption, a lot of customers or a lot of companies are going to be subscribing to software. The other one is the other item that IBM is asserting is that existing companies that own IBM hardware are transitioning from that CapEx to OpEx through cloud service providers. So this transformation is really being driven by what I would call the C-level suite or owners. And honestly, the reason why they're making that transition or that inquiry into cloud is because cloud is so relevant for what I would consider the Microsoft and Linux workload. So one of the items that IBM has recognized is that there's a proliferation of cloud solutions around Microsoft operating systems. There wasn't a cloud for IBM I. So for those companies that were literally saying, I don't know if I want to buy another IBM Power system, but I'm being told to look for cloud, this is where IBM has fully backed organizations like us to become a cloud service provider. The last point in regards to doing that cloud adoption is actually, again, doing more with less. So where we've entered into is what IBM considers the next technology era. It's called cognitive systems. And cognitive systems is really, as an organization that's being driven by revenue and being driven by my competitors in the space, how do I forecast more accurately what I need to do? So with the cognitive systems, it's going to take a look at your current data, and it's going to assume and accurately predict where you need to go. So, which is a lot different than what we call the traditional system. And the traditional system is I'm always going to be looking backwards. It's going to be a historical lookup point of view. And that's traditionally how most companies have driven their business. They're going to take a look at their data from a historical point of view. What did I sell last month? What did I sell last year? And then I'm going to try to forecast with cognitive systems, with leveraging I would call massive systems like IBM Watson you can turn better. So with cloud, number one, the terminology for cloud, or I think where a lot of people get nervous with cloud is that, number one, cloud is such an ambiguous term. A lot of people are scared of cloud because they don't really understand what the definition of cloud is. So with our solution, we tend to not look at it as like the pure public cloud, but it's more of a hybrid cloud solution. And so with hybrid cloud, it really goes back to what we consider our stack diagram, is where do you want control? What are you willing to give up control? So with the LightEdge hybrid solution center, we afford companies the opportunity to put the workload where it makes sense, to connect to other cloud providers where it makes sense. So Power Cloud, what problems does it really solve? Well, for a lot of organizations, again, if you're used to buying a power system, you only have one power system. Everything else that you have to accomplish, you're doing right with other companies, with other partners, with other vendors. So what does Power Cloud really solve? Number one, what we can do is we can help companies with data protection. For those organizations that have a IBM power system and would like offsite backup, right, have their data at a different facility or a different service provider, we can provide that. For those companies that need a disaster recovery plan, a working disaster recovery plan that they've got to show to their auditors, we can provide what we call a simple recovery model that meets your company's recovery time objective and recovery point objective and affordable investment spend. For those companies that have determined that any amount of downtime is going to inflict a huge financial impact to their organizations, we can provide what we call Premium Recovery Cloud. And Premium Recovery Cloud is layering in vision mimics, providing real-time replication to a running operating system or an LPAR with the ability to fail over. And then last, for those companies that, again, either want to extend their existing IBM I environment, so in order to have a development or test environment, or even move off their existing hardware platform, we can also displace hardware through our hosted LPAR solution. So Power Cloud for JD Edwards. Again, the reason why that you want to go to cloud, or why companies are looking to go to cloud, is more for scaling the business as the business grows. So what is Power Cloud for JD Edwards? We'll be the first one to admit we didn't invent cloud for IBM I. Virtualization has been around for a very long time. Matter of fact, there's a lot of companies that have purchased IBM Power Systems, have deployed BIOS, have created their own LPARs. They have, in a sense, their own private cloud. So with LightEdge, what we ended up doing at the request of IBM when they approached us 4 years ago is that we created a multi-tenant IBM I cloud environment. So what we're doing is we're providing a tier 3 grade data centers in regards to where the equipment's going to sit. We provide enterprise power systems. We provide enterprise network. We provide enterprise flash storage that your LPAR is going to reside on. And we also manage and maintain the BIOS, which is the hypervisor. So for those customers that are looking to migrate to cloud, All we're doing is we're building LPARs. We're either restoring or building net new, whichever operating system that the company requires. The things that you need to be aware of, right, as a cloud service provider who has x86 cloud, IBM iCloud, that we're running 24/7 by 365. Everything that you see on the screen is what you would expect out of any cloud service provider. So you want to make sure we have monitoring in place. We've got service controls, service deliveries, and we've got service resolution. So in order to meet our SLA guarantees to you as the customer, all of this would be expected. The other item to note with our solution, again, one of the deficiencies that we have within the IBM I community is the talent bench. So there's AS400 administrators or IBM I administrators, iSeries administrators, however you want to name them, are retiring every single year. Is that we have an extensive talent bench of IBM I administrators and engineers. As you can imagine, every single individual that we have on our team has over 20 years of experience. The other thing that when we vetted our bench as well is that they all came from a service provider environment. Why is that important? Because honestly, with our offering, we've been in business for 21 years providing cloud services or being a service provider. We're not your IBM, right? We're not your IBM hardware integrator that wants to be a service provider. We are a service provider. The other item to note is that we have an extensive bench of VMware and Microsoft engineers. In most IBM I environments, you're probably always going to have a Windows or a Linux server that's going to be talking to your IBM I system. So we have VMware, Microsoft, Cisco storage engineers on our talent bench as well. So managed services. Again, we have a pretty extensive bench. We're being asked upon by our customers again to augment from a staffing point of view of their technology department. So with our solution, if a customer subscribes to a hosted LPAR, our hosted LPARs can be self-managed by the customer, just like you manage your existing system, or you can leverage our talent bench to provide various levels of management. We can manage the operating system, we can manage the backups, and for a lot of companies, we actually manage what we call their disaster recovery process. So, and again, the product that we use for real-time replication or instantaneous disaster recovery is Mimics. We also do ITERA. So again, we've got roughly about, I think every single one of our Mimics administrators have about 20 years of experience working with Mimics back in the Lakeview days. So the big question is, how do I migrate to the cloud, specifically for IBM I? So it's not, honestly, it's not a secret. All of you have, at some point in time, have migrated from your old system to a new power system. So the number one way of doing that migration is, right, full system save, full system restore. And so in order to migrate onto our cloud platform, again, the first option would be customer provides us with a full system save tape. We restore you into an LPAR container onto our cloud platform. We provide your organization the ability to actually test before you do the cutover. Once you determine that everything is running as you would expect, we can actually redo the entire process, right? Provide a more current full system save, do a full system restore, or for those organizations that really understand their data, they can just refresh the data on the running LPAR. So one of the advantages that we have is we are also a Vision cloud service provider. So we provide the hosted LPAR on an OpEx investment spend. We can also provide Vision Mimics or Vision Itera on a predictable OpEx spend as well. And so one of the nice things with Mimics is that we can actually do or perform what we call a Mimics Mimics save while active, which facilitates for the migration. So you're still doing a full system save. We're still doing a full system restore. But what we're doing is we're layering in the capabilities of doing real-time replication of your data that's changing. You can test the environment. We'll pause the replication. You can test your environment. You're good. We'll restart the replication. And then at a planned cutover date, which typically takes anywhere between 15 minutes to 45 minutes, we can roll swap you away from your environment now into the cloud. So this is probably the #1 method that we've been using in order to do migrations to the cloud. So the other aspect of cloud is, right, #1, you're moving your LPAR onto what I would call a highly available enterprise architecture that for most companies would require that you're buying two of everything, 2 systems, 2 stands. You're probably going to have to, right, invest into an expensive stand for performance anymore. So you've positioned your company to be more into a what I would consider a proactive stance. So the last component on this is that we can provide monitoring. And so with our solution, we monitor by default everything from the BIOS all the way down to the data center, as you would expect. We can provide additional monitoring for applications, for operating systems, and even within your 4 walls, the technology that you've deployed. So again, you have one comprehensive pane through our monitoring solution for your organization. So circling back, again, our assertion in the conversations that we're having with the customers that we've already migrated to the cloud and prospect customers that we're talking to on a daily basis is that the focus for most companies today is really around their data and applications. Just like everybody that's on the call today, right? I mean, the things that make you unique is how you're running JD Edwards within your organization. And really everything else is what we call commodity IT.
And that brings us to how are we going to get our data and our applications to the Power Cloud? Well, this Power Cloud has offered a new world for JDE clients running World in one world. Managing and moving your environment to the Power Cloud is where our expertise and experience will help avoid both common and uncommon issues. We offer the strategic ability to guide customers through all aspects of a cloud migration, avoiding those issues altogether. Some of the obvious and maybe not so obvious issues typically faced during a migration, such as known issues, for example, required PTFs and patches that may be required for your specific version, commonly overlooked infrastructures that have ties to JDE, such as printers, directly interfacing servers, functional and integration guidance on the application side, how the application will flow under the new hardware infrastructure. technical and functional on the infrastructure side, integrating the cloud solution with your internal infrastructure such as business, B2B, reporting and integration points. Managed services, managing and maintaining the applications under the new architecture. Upgrading during a migration. Often clients have been looking at an application upgrade, and doing an application upgrade during a migration may be a good time to undertake that project, as you have the new hardware in place and you're going to be going through the testing phase during the migration. It may be a good fit to look at doing an application upgrade. It's not a perfect fit for everyone, but it may be a good fit for you. As part of a migration project and planning, as with any other project, there are considerations that need to be taken into account before, during, and after a migration. I'd like to cover a few of those key points from those phases. Before the migration, going through the risk identification process, planning for risks as well as all possible contingencies that may be needed. Identifying the risks ahead of time will help to eliminate surprises throughout the process. Identifying third-party applications that integrate directly with JDE, like applications that may pull data from or pump data into JD Edwards. Often these are the applications that get overlooked during a migration. Identify direct integrations to JDE, like EDI or reporting, DSI or RF devices that you may be using. Review current and needed security, including AD and LDAP. Specifically in a one-world environment, there's several functions that require network security for access and functionality. Identifying those processes and factors ahead of time can prevent future problems during the project, as well as ensuring that all aspects of your environment will be tested and are working when you go live. These are all the processes that we are able to guide you through and make it a smooth transition. During a migration, there's a lot of parts, a lot of moving parts that need to be managed, but one of the most important is going through a thorough testing phase. This includes data verification, verifying that your data is all there, that it's accurate, application functionality. Do your applications work the same as they did before? Running integrity reports on both systems to verify that they're the same. Performance testing on the new infrastructure to verify that there's no bottlenecks, like network configuration issues that may cause problems as you switch over. Testing all the applications and integration points discovered before starting. Testing any remote systems such as those that you may have in a warehouse, for example, like RFGen or barcode printers. All integrated systems that may still remain on site should be thoroughly tested and vetted out. As well as security, not just JDE, but network security and access. As I mentioned, there's a few things that require that network security for functionality. As I said, there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account during a migration, but defining your test phase and allocating the required resources to run through those tests will ensure that you have no surprises or no issues at your go live. After a migration, there's a few things that you should have already planned for or that you should already be aware of. Managing and regular JDE maintenance. We can offer full managed services that cover you from the data layer all the way through the hardware layer. But these are things that need to be considered. Who's going to be doing the managing of the software and the maintenance of the JDE software as well. Future upgrades to applications. You'll no longer be constrained by the hardware that you have on site to do future upgrade. Scaling out will be much simpler, quicker, getting to the next release that much faster. Hardware upgrades, as Roger had mentioned, will be much simpler and can often take place behind the scene with little or no impact to the users. And maybe most important is having the ability to scale out on demand for future growth. So you're free to get out there and double the size of your business, and we can meet those needs on the fly.
All right, so Thank you guys for that. It was great. We usually try to keep that brief just so we have time for questions. So again, while we got some great ones, so while I'm asking them to our presenters, feel free to ask more questions if one of these sparks another question for you. So I have one that says, do I have to upgrade my application to move it to a cloud environment?
That's a great question. So there are a lot of unique constraints to each individual client. In most instances, there is not an application upgrade that is required. However, for some of our clients that have been on very old releases and moving to a Power Cloud on a new iOS, there are some updates that need to be taken, and in some rare cases, an upgrade that would have to be performed to get you to the next level, to get you supported on that iOS operating system. But typically, other than some patches and maybe some PTFs that need to be applied to get you there, you wouldn't have to do an upgrade.
Okay, great. I have another one that says, I have other libraries besides JDE. Can they all move over?
Also a good question. Absolutely. It doesn't just mean moving your JD Edwards application that lives on your iSeries to the Power Cloud, but all of your libraries that live on your AS400 can be moved over and brought over and integrated as long as they've gone through a thorough testing plan phase, and there's no issues at all bringing over other applications and other libraries.
Okay, another question, will I need to relicense my JDE software as part of the move?
No, unless there was an upgrade required during the process. If you were on a very old release and had to do an upgrade to get you to a supported release to go to the current iOS, no, there would be no licensing required from JD Edwards.
Okay, great. Another question, after migrating to the cloud, do I need to maintain my hardware software licenses with IBM?
That's a great question. So as a IBM cloud service provider, we have the unique opportunity to actually provide the operating system license as a CSP. And so the answer is no, you do not need to renew your hardware and operating system licenses. That is responsibility now of the service provider.
Another question, do we get the LPAR on cloud for evaluation?
So the answer to that is that yes. For those companies that want to look at the difference between running an LPAR on their existing equipment or running it on our cloud platform, we will absolutely be able to provide an LPAR for an evaluation, or what we call a proof of concept phase.
Okay, another question, do we have to use Mimics and ITERA for DRNA?
No. So as we are providing an LPAR with a running operating system, so it's IBM iOS, right, 7.1 through 7.3. The operating system and application is under your control. And so if you want to use another third-party product, you're more than welcome to do that. Again, we decided as an organization that we were going to use ITERA and Mimics.
If I need more storage, RAM, or CPU, what does that process look like?
So that's a very good question. So again, we didn't invent virtualization for IBM I. Virtualization actually existed. It's an LPAR. So in order for us to modify the amount of processor, the amount of memory, or the amount of storage, it's just basically turning a knob. In all scenarios, the changes are instantaneous. They do not require any downtime. And so again, if you're accustomed to running your own private cloud, you already have the capabilities today.
Does a move like this require a lot of downtime?
So I think the question was, if if a customer wants to migrate to the cloud, does it require a lot of downtime? Again, this is the reason why we have really two migration scenarios. So we do the save and restore. Again, for everybody that's refreshed hardware, I think you guys understand what amount of effort and what amount of downtime it takes to do that, to do the cutover. For those companies that require very minimal downtime, our recommendation is that allow us to do what we call the mimics while active. And so again, what we're going to do is we're going to restore your environment onto our cloud platform using a full system save tape. We will implement mimics. Mimics will replicate real time all the changed data. And then at that point, it's literally doing what we call a role swap. And so the role swap would be stopping mimics, bringing up the other environment, and then between both organizations, we'd have to make network changes to basically point all production traffic to the cloud LPAR.
Okay, great. Another question, do we get any cloud tools to manage the LPARs on cloud AppRet from standard IBM tools?
So what we have done is we have provided what I think everyone understands. We provided the HMC council access to their LPARs, if that's the question that's being asked. And so with the HMC access, again, it's your responsibility as the operating system unless you explicitly asked us to manage the operating system. But you can apply your own PTS, you can do your own OS upgrade, you can ITIL your own LPAR. In regards to tools, development tooling, again, those are the conversations that we would have with every single company to identify which development tool that you have, and again, that responsibility falls on the cloud service provider.
Okay, another question. How do customers typically handle applications that are serial number specific if they were required to implement their disaster recovery plan and be switched to a different LPAR?
Great question. So we have a lot of customers today that are doing disaster recovery, either through what we call our recovery cloud or our premium recovery cloud. So number one, as we all know, a lot of software companies are still licensing their applications based off serial number. And so for us as the service provider, we actually will provide the serial number to your organization, which then you can provide to the application vendor. We have had situations in the past where the customer basically goes to the application vendor and then I would say strong arm to get what we call temporary license keys for disaster recovery.
All right, another question. Can we manage the JD Edwards role swaps on our own or need to involve the cloud?
Either option is available. It can be managed, it can be self-managed, just like the iSeries can be self-managed, or it can be a managed service that someone can help you with. So it can go either way. We offer the full range of managed services, and it can also be managed in-house still.
We have virtualized prod, dev, and DR systems. Will our licensing with IBM remain the same?
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, it says we have virtualized prod, dev, and DR systems. Will our licensing with IBM remain the same?
Let's see. Let's see if I can get that question. So if you have software agreements with IBM and you want a cloud LPAR or a cloud virtual instance for like a development or test, the IBM licensing agreement is between us and IBM. So if you were to manage and maintain your own equipment for production, but you want development and test to be on our cloud platform, you're only responsible for the relationship between IBM and yourself for your production equipment. Everything that's on our platform is our responsibility.
Okay. Another question, am I required to have an active support agreement with Oracle?
No, in fact, we've had some clients that have not been on active support in a very long time. As long as we don't have to do any updates, take any PTFs, upgrades, there is no requirement that you have an active support agreement. If we do have to do an upgrade, or if there were any updates that would have to be taken to move you to that cloud, then that would require an active support agreement with Oracle.
Okay, how does OS v5.4 or unsupported OS versions, how are they migrated to the cloud?
OS v5.r4, so how are they migrated to the cloud? That's a great question, because we have actually had to do that for companies that are running at OS v5.r4 with JD Edwards. So the very first step that we need to perform is that we need to get the customer upgraded to 7.1 from an operating system version. So the limitation still exists. There's a little bit more flexibility with the cloud service provider. We have power rate systems at the P10 or P20 processor group level. And again, this is an IBM limitation. You have to be at 7.1 in order to run on power 8. So one of the things that we will work with customers is help them upgrade their operating system from 5.4 to 7.1. And then once you're at 7.1, I believe it's TR8, then we can actually do the migration onto the cloud platform.
That's correct, and also in that same scenario that, in fact, we just barely did one of these. The only thing we had to do to the JD Edwards application was a couple of PTFs.
Yeah, it was actually very painless for the customer to get to 7.1 and also migrate to the cloud.
Okay, another question. Are your administrators and engineers US-based?
Currently today, yes. All of our administrators and engineers reside in the United States.
Okay. Another question. Can we run the JDE upgrade from our prem to IBM iSeries on cloud?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, can we run the JDE upgrade from our on-prem to IBM iSeries on cloud?
Aaron, I think that question is yours.
Yeah, I think the question is, can we do an upgrade from our on-prem and directly into the cloud? And the answer is an indirect yes. There is some intermediate steps that may be needed, but it can go directly to the cloud through the upgrade process. And so the only thing that would be out on the Power Cloud would be the upgraded version. There has been a case in the past where we had to have, because of the limitations of v5.r4 that we were just talking about earlier, that we had to do an intermediate step to a 7.1 system to upgrade it, and then upgrade that application to the Power Cloud. But the short answer is yes. The end result would be that the Power Cloud would host the upgraded version only. Yep.
Okay, great. These questions are all awesome. We have another. And it says, am I responsible for maintaining the operating system and backup?
So the answer is, if you would like to maintain and manage the operating system version and backups, again, the LPARs can be self-managed. If your organization would like managed services, we can provide that.
Okay, so not just for Sadie Edwards, but how are third-party licenses handled?
So one of the things that we decided by getting into the IBM iCloud is that we recognize that application licensing is really centered on processor feature group, right, of the systems, which is the reason why we have essentially two distinct hardware platforms. We've got the P20 processor groups, and we have the P10. And so for most companies that are running on P10, we're going to migrate you to our P10 platform. If you're on a P5, typically there's no financial penalty going from a P5 to a P10. For those customers that are still on P20, we're going to keep you on a P20 system.
Okay, another question. How would our international business units connect to your Power Cloud?
So think of our cloud truly as an extension of your environment. So one of the things that we will do, again, this is through the planning process, is that we need to make sure that we engineer the Power Cloud or the hosted LPAR as part of your existing network infrastructure. And so if you have, so an example is we have actually several customers that are what we call global. Their global users are accessed into our facilities, our data center, into our cloud ecosystem through their standard global network contracts.
Great, thank you. Okay, so it seems like that is the conclusion of all of our questions. We typically like to keep the presentation brief, so we have time for that, and those were all great. We will be following up with you, all the registrants, with an FAQ of questions, remaining ones that we could not answer today. And we'll also follow up with a recording of the webinar in a video format as well as a podcast for those of you that would like to have access to that. We want to thank you for attending, and we hope that you found this helpful. We have our contact information up on the screen. We'll also be following up in those emails with more contact information if you're interested in learning more. Thanks, guys, and have a great rest of your day.